God's hand is upon Daniel, and his hand is upon us. That's something we're going to talk about today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Rod Hembree.
And I'm Janice.
And this program is a program designed to take you through the Bible in 1 year from Genesis to Revelation. With that, we get to teach on things like this. God's hand is upon Daniel and his friends, as his hand is upon us. We'll talk about that and more coming up. Corey, what's up?
Today we're going to talk about the Nebuchadnezzar from the book of Daniel.
Excellent job, and Ryan is here with Cosmic Mysteries. Ryan?
How big is the universe, and where are we within it?
Excellent, and what did you study for today?
We are going to talk about the name changes we read about in Daniel chapter 1.
Very good. All of this and more is coming your way right now.
Today we begin our study in the book of Daniel. Now Daniel's an interesting guy. He's in the courts of Babylon, so he has kind of a up close and personal view, and we get that view in his book. Let's take a look first at the city of Babylon. The Babylon featured in the Bible and dominant during the days of Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel is known today as the Neo-Babylonian Empire. After years under Assyrian control, Babylon had broken free and defeated Assyria by teaming with the Median Empire. Famous King Nebuchadnezzar, while he was still Prince Nebuchadnezzar, had married the Median princess. After much warfare, Nebuchadnezzar, who became king when his father died during their campaigns, returned to his capital city, Babylon, and there he began more aggressive campaigns. This time, they were constructive. Nebuchadnezzar built his palace, many buildings, strengthened the walls, and built one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Legend has it that Nebuchadnezzar built the gardens as a present for his Median queen, Amytis. Ancient historian Herodotus visited the city about 100 years later, still raving about its beauty and impressive construction. The city straddled the Euphrates River and boasted an 11-mile-long outer wall with 8 fortified, decorated gates. The most famous is the Ishtar Gate. Its remains were removed and today are displayed in Germany. Nebuchadnezzar used fire-baked bricks to build Babylon. These lasted longer and held up to water damage. What made Nebuchadnezzar's bricks unique is that he also had his name stamped into them. It's interesting that the book of Daniel may allude to these practices. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into a massive furnace, probably one of the kilns used to make these bricks. Daniel also records Nebuchadnezzar's ancient boasts, and those are paralleled in the practice of stamping his name into every building, literally building the city on his own name. Now, I mentioned briefly earlier that we get this really cool perspective of Daniel because he is right in the courts of ancient Babylon. He was taken as an exile as a young man, and he was retrained to be a part of the courts of Babylon. Now, this was a very common practice, and it wasn't just unique to Babylon. A lot of time, many empires, when they would conquer a new territory, they would take the young, impressionable, yet very intelligent minds, and they would bring them into their court systems and they would re-educate them. Now we see here in the early chapters of Daniel how he and 3 of his friends resisted this re-education process. They allowed themselves to be educated in the ways of Babylon, but they did not let that blot out their love for God or their desire to follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the creator of the universe. And so we get this really interesting twist here of Daniel and his friends living in Babylon, trying to live out their faith within a culture that does not accept their faith. Now, that sounds like a very familiar challenge, doesn't it? Now, this perspective is also really cool because we've had other perspectives from prophets talking about Babylon, but these have been outside of the courts of Babylon. We have Jeremiah who prophesied about Babylon from a different nation, and we've had Ezekiel prophesy from outside of the city of Babylon. So we get this really cool tri-view here.
Deported and handpicked for government is the fate of this man in the Bible named Daniel. Daniel's prophecies cover 12 chapters, but they bridge the entirety of his ministry. Daniel is a very old man when we come to the end of his life, and actually his Hebrew name, Daniel, means God is my judge. Now the Greek form of this name is Daniel. It is the one that our English Bible uses. Now, the book of Daniel is an amazing story about several remarkable prophets who are in the kingdom of ancient Babylon. It is evident that God is with these men. King Nebuchadnezzar actually is saved as a result of knowing Daniel.
Daniel 1, verses 1 through 15. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the articles of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, and he brought the articles into the treasure house of his God. Then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies and of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so that at the end of that time they might serve before the king. Now, from among those of the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them the chief of the eunuchs gave names. He gave Daniel the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah, Shadrach, to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into the favor and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs, and the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink, for why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. So Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Please, test your servants for 10 days, and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be examined before you, and the appearance of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies, and see as you see fit, so deal with your servants. So he consented with them in this matter, and tested them 10 days. At the end of 10 days, their features appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies. Daniel chapter 1, verses 1 through 15.
Daniel is an amazing prophet of God. He's called one of the major prophets because we cover most of his life. And as we look at this, we need to understand and study and realize God is doing something with this man. We begin at the beginning when Daniel's very young. And Janice has just read that for you, and I want to encourage you. We are going to cover 3 of the 4 points today in the Bible Guide. Now, as we look at this, it's important for you to understand and to know exactly what we're saying. So in the review, we call this wisdom from under. Why? Because Daniel is an exile. He has been taken from Jerusalem, brought into Babylon, and he is one of the fine members that the Nebuchadnezzar, the king, and his eunuchs have put together. And by the way, eunuch is somebody who's castrated. So that's how they did things in those days. And our reading is Daniel chapter 1 to 3. If you read that, you'll keep up with us. And this is fascinating. We've got a lot of reading to do here because we need to look at this. Our focus is on Daniel 1 to 15. And as we look at this, let us focus on it. Here comes Daniel 1. Listen carefully to the word of God. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hands, with some of the articles of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, that is Babylon, to the house of his God. And he brought the articles into the treasure house of his God. And then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of the eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and the literature of the Chaldeans, or those who live in Babylon. Now, this is amazing, and as we look at this, we need to understand God's hand is upon Daniel and his friends. God's hand, beloved, is also on us for our future. Now, that's important for you and I to understand. As we look at our lives, and we say, well, we've got this wrong, and we've got that wrong, and everything else. But as we look at our lives, we see God intervening for us. What's happening? God is taking us through, if we believe in Jesus Christ, if we prayed the sinner's prayer, God is taking us through the knowledge of who he is, how strong he is. And that's what God was doing here with Daniel. And so we begin this introduction to Daniel's story with that setup. We go to 5 to 7. We continue and it says, and the king appointed them for daily provision of the king's delicacies of wine, which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so that at the end of that time they might serve before the king. Now from among those, the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them, the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. He gave Daniel the name of Belshazzar, to Hananiah, Shadrach, and to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. That is amazing. God allows their names to be changed to Belshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, why is that important? It's important because when God begins to speak and say things, he allows your names to be changed to the names in that land. That is important for us to remember. So it's not so much about our will as it is about what God is doing for us and through us. Very important. We go back to the last part and it says, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into the favor and the goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? And then you will endanger my head before the king. Well, so Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. and then let our appearance be examined before you, and the appearance of your young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies. And as you see fit, so deal with your servants. So he consented with them in this manner, and he tested them for 10 days. Now, this is absolutely stunning and amazing. God brings Daniel into favor with the chief of the eunuchs. He gains permission to test the food, and it works. It's true. Absolutely amazing. God puts us in test just like Daniel. And Daniel is involved in this, and he is from exile, really. And God makes him a man of power and a man of stature. And this is the beginning. He says, test me with these delicacies. And so God knows, and he allows us to be tested and challenges us to be tested. And so Daniel became one of the greatest men in all of ancient history, according to the Bible.
Prophet Daniel paints a very vivid picture for us of King Nebuchadnezzar of the Babylonian Empire. Now, Nebuchadnezzar also paints a pretty interesting picture of himself. Take a look at this inscription. Nebuchadnezzar, like many kings, received mixed reviews in the Bible. Interestingly, it is this pagan king of Babylon, responsible for the destruction of the Jerusalem temple and the slaughter of many Judeans, that is quoted praising God in his later life. Nebuchadnezzar was named after the Babylonian god of wisdom. According to Daniel and an inscription found in the late 1700s, Nebuchadnezzar took that to heart. He was the embodiment of power and supernatural wisdom, boasting in his greatest achievement, his beautifying of the city of Babylon. What we today call the East India House inscription parallels the boasts of Nebuchadnezzar recorded in Daniel. This black stone inscription was carved at the order of Nebuchadnezzar to record his glory. Daniel chapter 4 records the boast like this: "Is this not Babylon the Great that I have built by my vast power to be a royal residence and to display my majestic glory?" Nebuchadnezzar's East India House inscription reads, "Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, renowned ruler, the heroic son of Nabopolassar. The walls of Babylon I extended all the way round the city. I carefully fortified these defenses and fitted Babylon out to be a city of treasures." From the rest of the inscription, archaeological remains, and historical accounts, we also know Nebuchadnezzar built at least 3 palaces, a ceremonial path for Babylon's chief god, and several temples, all lavishly decorated. He also built an enormous moat around the city and gates to the river Euphrates covered with bronze. An estimated 15 million baked bricks were used in his public building projects alone. This king of power may have gotten away with it too, if only he didn't have a prophet of God in his courts. As we embark on this year's study of the New Testament of the Bible, we are excited to bring to you 2 new original products to help you deepen your understanding of these influential times. Our new DVD, Discover the World of the Bible, Episode 2, The New Testament, and our New Testament Timeline. Both of these tools have been fashioned to make a study of the New Testament more complete and accessible. The New Testament Timeline keeps us on track in history as we study through the Gospels, even lining up popular Roman history with events in the New Testament. Our new DVD, Discover the World of the Bible, Episode 2, brings relevant historical archaeological evidences to establish the Gospels in and as history while explaining cultural truths that hold theological significance. We are pleased to be able to offer both of these products together for a donation of $30, or separately, our new DVD for a $25 donation, or the New Testament Timeline alone for a $10 donation. Timeline bundles are also available, so please call our offices for details. To get a hold of these new products, write, call, or order online today.
Thank you for staying with us and being a part of this program. I need to tell you that next time on the Quick Study television program, the first kingdom of the earth is like a lion and is given a man's heart. We'll talk about that and more coming up. Right now, here is Ryan with Cosmic Mysteries. Ryan?
Well, we know the universe is big, but just how big exactly is it? Does the Bible have anything to say about that? Also, where are we within the universe? Are we just in a random, not so special place? Or is our location special? Today we explore our solar system in the universe.
The universe is so immense that it is humanly impossible to even fathom it. Even modern man's highly advanced eyes cannot see its edge. In fact, the Bible declares that its ends will never be discovered. Jeremiah 31:37 says, "If heaven above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, says the Lord." Since God will never abandon Israel, we will never fully know the extent of the universe. So what do we know of the universe? Of the estimated 100 billion observable galaxies, we are in a galaxy called the Milky Way. It was named the Milky Way because it looks like milk poured out over the sky. The ancient Greeks are actually credited with making this comparison. In fact, the modern term galaxy comes from the Greek for milk. We cannot directly see the Milky Way since we are within it. However, astronomer Harlow Shapley in the early 20th century was able to actually map the galaxy. Indeed, by mapping the distribution and brightness of Cepheid variable stars, he was able to produce the first spatial map of the Milky Way. He found that it was a large, flat, spiral disk about 100,000 light-years across. Interestingly, our solar system is nowhere near the center, but rather about 26,000 light-years off-center in one of the spiral arms. Yet our solar system is not static. Indeed, as the Earth orbits the Sun in turn orbits the galaxy at a stunning 250 kilometers per second. Not only this, but our galaxy also is in motion through the universe. This is what the Bible passage in Psalm 19:6 means when it says that the sun's rising is from one end of heaven and its circuit to the other end, and that there is nothing hidden from its heat. While the placement of our solar system within the Milky Way may seem odd or random, it is absolutely crucial for our survival and for scientific discovery itself. Indeed, authors Alex Williams and Dr. John Hartnett explain, "We are far enough away from everything else so that we can get a magnificent view of the galaxy without having to suffer the ill effects of the gravitational and radiation powerhouse that drives it." This exact placement is no surprise to Bible believers. Isaiah 45:18 says that God himself created the heavens and formed and made the earth, and that he established it and did not create it in vain, but formed it to be inhabited.
These amazing scientific discoveries, which ironically can only be made because of our specific placement, clearly suggest an intelligent creator. Indeed, Jean-Jacques Rousseau once said that the visible order of the universe proclaims a supreme intelligence. Now, President George Washington put it this way: "It is impossible to account for the creation of the universe without the agency of a supreme being." The Bible proclaims that the creation should lead us all to the conclusion that there is a supreme being. Indeed, Romans 1:20-21 says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. May we consider these things carefully.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan. Excellent job. What did you study today?
Well, you know what? We have these 4 young men who are Israeli exiles in Babylon. They are going through training, and they have names that they have been called that mean something in Hebrew. Daniel, God is my judge. Hananiah, God has been gracious. Mishael, who is what God is, or who is like God. And Azariah, the Lord has helped. These names, every time, Rod, somebody talked to them, that's what their names meant. It held such meaning, and they loved the Lord God so much. Now imagine having your name changed to honor Babylonian gods. Daniel's name was changed to Belteshazzar, meaning Bel, protect him. Bel is a name for Nebuchadnezzar's favorite god, Marduk. Hananiah was changed to Shadrach, now meaning the command of Aku. Aku is a Babylonian god of the moon. Meshach now, what is Aku like, or who is like Aku? This is what his new name meant. And Azariah changed to Abednego, servant of Nebo, that Babylonian god of wisdom.
Wow.
Now, every time they were talked to, totally different meaning.
Very interesting. Here's call to prayer. God is ready to test us when we are in a situation where a test is the only thing we have. Daniel is the man who dares to run the test as a slave in the kingdom full of exiles. God never puts us into an impossible situation. He always has a way for us to gain control, and we can bring His hand into it. Now that's exactly what happens in the book of Daniel. This kind of book is unusual, coming from a place where God is punishing. The Lord Almighty takes Himself and makes Himself known and available. From this point, the most powerful man on the planet, Nebuchadnezzar, will test the determination of the God of the Hebrews. It's true, it's absolutely 100% true. What am I talking about? I'm not talking about Daniel, although that's true. I'm talking about the Lord Jesus Christ, the God of Daniel, the God who saved Nebuchadnezzar, because Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago died on the cross and He rose again. He took care of your sin and mine, and He said, if you accept me, then I will save you. And so come to Jesus today and say, Lord, forgive me of my sin. I need your help now.